What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Soul Hackers 2 spoiler discussion. I am here with Spencer from SMTNetwork and Ozzy. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? If you don't know me, I am the guy who talks about SMT and Persona and all things in between on a weekly basis on my podcast, Shin Megami Tensei Network. You can find me usually talking about Soul Hackers for way too long, and I'm holding a personal record to see how many spoiler casts I can be on without saying the same thing over and over and over.
Hey, and I personally talk about all that stuff on a yearly basis when I'm, actually getting content out. But I make proper reviews and just scripted content about Persona, MegaTen, whatever else comes to my mind.
Nice. So,
Gnarly, do you remember when you used to upload yearly?
yes.
The bad old days.
Well, the title pretty much speaks for itself. We're here to discuss spoilers for Soul Hackers 2. But first, I want to give a shout out to this video's sponsor, Ridge Wallet. For those of you that haven't heard of it, Ridge Wallet is a high-quality brand of wallets that come in a wide variety of different colors and styles. Their small size makes them an easy fit into any pocket in your clothes, and with them being held together by a stretchable band, the wallet can expand to accommodate up to 12 cards and lots of paper bills. There's also the key case, which keeps your keys safe and secure while looking very stylish. Plus, it comes with very sturdy key rings too, so any extra keys or objects you may have will not fall off. I've been using both the key case and wallet for over a month, and I have no complaints. I could not ask for a better quality wallet. You can check out Ridge Wallet's great line of products right now using the link down below in the description. And for every dollar you spend right now, you will be entered to win a brand new Fort Bronco, or $75,000 if you would rather just have cash. I want to give a big thank you to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to the video. So, what did you guys think about the, overall story for Soul Hackers 2? Because I'm hearing a lot of mixed opinions. I'm hearing a lot of people say it's kind of poopy. I'm hearing a lot of people say it's really good. I'm just kind of in the middle. I think it's good, but not great.
I very much think that the story, it's very brief, but I think it does a lot with what it's telling. Because even though, if you were to speedrun the game and just go, main story, main story, main story, it would probably only take, a couple hours. There are not that many major events that happen, but I feel like each event that does happen is very important to developing the characters, exploring the overall plot. There's not really anything you can remove that the narrative would really stay the same if you did. And I think that what is there is pretty good.
What about you, Spencer?
It's a tough one. I will warn everyone ahead of time. Gnarly, you're definitely going to be the most down on it, I think, in terms of between Ozzy and me. But I'm in a weird camp, so I'm at over 100 hours with it all said and done because I was like, I'm not putting this game down until I platinum it. So it was interesting of me kind of having the slowest first playthrough, because I think my playthrough took me about 60 to 65 hours on normal, and that was because I wanted to do every single thing I could on my first run. And there is missable content in the game, so that was kind of advantageous. There are straight up areas in the game you will miss if you're just rushing through the story. You'll never get to the third section of the 24th ward buildings and everything. But for me, at least, I was really pleasantly kind of surprised with it, of executing on a story that was really, really shallow. And in the sense of, it's shallow of, it's probably one of the easiest to describe Atlas stories I've ever played. But the cast and everything save it from being kind of boring. A lot of people have sort of compared it to the inverse of SMT5, of not having the deepest gameplay, but having a lot more of a digestible and cohesive story. And it definitely kind of, works in that sense. And even though I love SMT5, at least from the story aspect, I liked the gameplay a lot for this. They're so different, but the story-wise for it was an interesting one of, if you were coming into this only wanting a sequel to the original Soul Hackers, yes, you'll probably be disappointed. If you wanted just to see an interesting story that happens to take place in that same universe, then this is definitely going to give you something interesting to chew on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, basically the story for Soul Hackers 2 can best be summarized as Ringo and Fig are sent by Ion to investigate the Phantom Society. So they do the whole, like, they find all the summoners, do the whole soul hacking thing, and then they find out that the Phantom Society is going to destroy the world. And then you also have Yatagarasu, who's there, but they don't really do much. But then, you have that whole plot about, like, Iron Mask and that whole thing with his, like, the whole thing with his Zoma, and he's trying to collect all the different colored sperm cells because that will, like, kickstart the apocalypse. And yeah, that's basically that's basically the short version.
Mm.
I will say I like how you call them the Covenant sperm cells, where I just call them MacGuffins. Like,
Same thing.
Well, you know, some people don't like to collect sperm cells. That's all I'm gonna say.
Mm.
I'll
I
say
call
this,
that cowardice.
I think this is an interesting kind of question I want to ask you guys. How did you feel about not only how Yatagarasu was implemented, but how did you feel about how both the war between Yatagarasu and the Phantom Society was?
I thought it was... I mean, I thought it was handled pretty poorly. Like, So in the game, they describe it as, like, this big war with, you know, like, the conflict is really bad and people dying, but we don't actually, like, see that during the game or during any cutscene. So, as far as I'm aware, it's just, like, an underground, like, gang war that isn't actually affecting people all that much.
I do understand that angle of it. The way I kind of saw it was, there is that war going on, and it's kind of like, the game very much frames it as a arguably meaningless, just perpetual conflict between these different sides. But instead of just constantly seeing that angle of it and just like the constant slaughter between them, we very much see like either, you know, Yatagarasu or Phantom Society members just kind of chilling out, doing their own thing. We see like hired guns in their angle of it. We see, you know, like Raven, who's kind of basically retired from Yatagarasu, and just like different angle, like the orphanage as well. You kind of have that inner conflict, but we're very much seeing the surrounding effects of it and how it affects the entire world. On top of, in terms of the conflict itself, showing that Yatagarasu and Phantom Society really are not that different at all. So we don't see, you know, the perpetual constant war very much, but we see the massive fallout of that, and I think, honestly, that's really cool.
I feel like West Side Story had a better, like, faction versus faction feeling. Like, Yatagarasu and Phantom Society might as well just be, like, two dudes that you never really see fighting. Because, like, I actually kind of wish, because, like, to sort of, like, go back a little bit to the way you were describing the intro of, like, Aeon, Aeon basically being like, hey, you need to stop the Phantom Society. Like, for me, it was kind of interesting of just being like, it didn't feel like that was the directive they were really giving him. It was basically, hey, you need to stop this member of the Phantom Society from doing something possibly apocalyptic, but we don't know what it is yet. And it involves these people, because it's like, the game never focuses on them. And even when you do get little tiny bits of lore from Yatagarasu and the Phantom Society, it really is always personality driven. Like, the lore we learn is through things that happened to Arrow, or things that happened through Kuzunoha or Arrow, and all of them like that, because I'd say, like, the moment the game kind of had a chance at the very end, and we'll get to that later, with like the kind of representing members from both clans, it was kind of like, no, this is not the story. The story is about the perpetual cycle of violence and how and why people try and end it and stuff like that. And I thought that was interesting. Of like, obviously, to have that cycle of violence, you need to have two sides constantly bashing against each other. The problem is it never showed us, like, ever. We never, like, had a moment of, like, honestly, the most it ever really looked like that was when we were, like, outside of flashbacks, is the opening movie. I was actually surprised how much, like, exclusive lore is shown in that, like, 3-minute opening movie, because if you notice, none of that is actually in the game. Like, it's all stuff that happens before Ringo and Fig are born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ringo and Fig have existed before, it's just they got it's basically just they were given their bodies at the start of the game.
I wouldn't even say that. From what I saw of it, was more so like they were aspects of Ion, not really like individual. They were just like a part of Ion. That Ion's like, I'll just break off one part of me and another part, give them each different personalities, and send them off. So they didn't really exist per se before then.
They even joke about being 5 minutes old, because like to me,
yeah, they're newborns.
I always looked at Fig and Ringo as like what Adam and Eve did. Of like, Eve was a part of Adam, but she's not Adam. She was made from Adam's rib, and so on and so forth. Like with those kind of comparisons, like I get what you mean. Like obviously they have knowledge of the world and stuff, but that's just through the environment they were born with. Flamma and Aeon. Like Flamma isn't even Aeon, but Flamma is the like verbal conduit that they talk through them all, and like
it's like a middleman.
Yeah, so it's like they're all from the same sort of thing, but they are all with it. It is an interesting one of like, I'm glad how they handled it, because again, if they did the stupid fish out of water thing with like, I can already imagine the scenario with Ringo and Fig and them being like, what's this strange pie-shaped food? This is pizza? This is weird.
Do they even need to eat?
Well, no, they talked about it. They're like, eating and drinking, we don't have to do it, but our bodies can. Like, their bodies can be fine without food or water. They just like the act of doing it.
Ringo's just an alcoholic.
That is true. Why did no one get drunk in this game? That's a great question.
You don't know that. Like, Ringo could have just been, like, off that entire time, and honestly, that would have explained a lot.
You know what would have been funny is actually if they implemented the Catherine getting drunk feature. Because, like, there's effects you get from eating food, so why shouldn't there be alcoholic effects? Like, if you did a bunch of, like, drinking back to back and back, like, you'd be like, oh, I'm faster in a dungeon, but I have a higher chance of missing attacks.
That would have been cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so back to the story, though. How did you guys kind of like immediately getting that quick lore dump, and then just you're in the first dungeon? Because like with SMT5, it was kind of funny where we were like, wow, this starts really fast for an Atlas game. Like Soul Hackers is that on crack of like, here's your plot dump, go to the first dungeon. Like, did you all feel like that was too much, or did you kind of like learning about the world?
I mean, I thought it was fine. It's because, like, once you're past that, the game kind of loosens its grip. It's not like Persona 5 where you get that every 4 hours.
No, I personally really like that intro section, because it is just like, Ringo's born, Ringo goes to the shipping yard, Arrow's dead. Okay, soul hack. And then, yeah, once you go through that little section, it's just like, okay, go out, do everything else in the game.
Yeah, well, and then, I mean, after that, you got like Melody is dead, you got to kill that rapper guy, and then Saizo is dead, and yeah.
We gotta talk about Melody's murderer real quick. Somebody, whether it be you two or someone listening in the comments, explain to me how someone like RS could actually have murdered Melody, because that's the one plot hole this game never answered for me.
Not to mention the boss fight was pretty easy.
I mean, I at least needed a moment where someone was like, maybe like, I did a description of this earlier while talking to Marsh, but like, we were like, if she got hit in a car accident and was heavily injured and then he killed her, I would understand. But like full strength level 5 Melody, I feel could confidently have destroyed RS.
Well, it's because...
I could be wrong. In the opening, doesn't it show her surrounded by like 15 people or something like that?
It just shows
it's just
her
kind of RS leading.
Demons.
I thought it was multiple like Phantom Society members around her.
I'll pull it up. I have this saved because I'm a loser, but you guys talk about it. How did you feel about that?
Shouldn't, like, because she was, before she joined Ringo, she was just another devil summoner, so I guess she must have forgot to bring her demons along that day.
You know what would be funny? Because the game never actually shows us them being devil summoners, like, outside of a quick... Like, honestly, actually, I think Saizo's the only one we ever actually see being a devil summoner without Ringo. There is a chance that Arrow and Melody just are sucky, really bad devil summoners. That is possible.
I mean, all I'm saying, Arrow immediately ran straight into a bullet in the opening, so...
I like this
I don't think he
strategy
found-
of sending all of my demons at once, riding each other with no real like regard of what's going on. Although to be fair, the opening's kind of loosey goosey because like Arrow at least makes sense because like Arrow basically just gets like ganked upon by everybody. It looks like that whole like thing. Arrow's death is like, yep, I can see how this guy died. But yeah, I think it just because everyone's death was very poignant. Especially because of who was responsible to it, I really just wish we could have gone back in time. Like seriously, this would be such an easy change, and tell me that like the game couldn't have worked this way. Basically, Melody gets the Covenant. Iron Mask turns on her. Shotguns her in the face. There's a plot reason why that would also make sense. It would be confusing at the time because that's her lover, but then RS is there when like hanging out over her dead body or whatever.
Okay, no, because I understand why they didn't go that angle, because I guess obviously spoilers are free reign here. That was essentially, because I don't know if they made it clear when she learned that Iron Mask wasn't Paul, but dying to Iron Mask was essentially what she wanted, so I do think the most insulting thing to do to her that would make her, want to come back and want to get that retribution was to just have her die by a meaningless grunt instead of, the man she loved.
That's interesting you thought that. I didn't think that she knew Iron Mask wasn't who he said he was until, like, she had ideas but didn't really know. Like, she probably knew after the first boss fight you have.
Well, because I thought that was the implication of her, like, because, everyone has their kind of, like, quote whenever they're dying and Ringo goes to save them. And hers was like, yeah, I can't die yet, I need to know the truth. And by the time, like, you actually get to her being alive, she's much more bitter. She's, essentially seeing herself as not really part of the Phantom Society, not really, like, Yatagarasu, obviously. So, like, clearly she knows that either something is up with Paul, more likely she knows it's not Paul, she just obviously doesn't know who it is.
Well, it could have been that, like, she wasn't, like, she didn't know who it was, but then when she saw Raven, she was like, yeah, that's definitely him.
Mm.
It's definitely interesting. I will say, I did scroll through the opening. There is a shot in the opening that shows Melody surrounded by 5 Devil Summoners who presumably would be Yatagarasu, or I mean, honestly, it could be Phantom Society turning on her or whatever. But like,
yeah,
it does show her behind them, but it doesn't really like show. And then she found him, but yeah, it could be assumed that yeah, she fought like a whole bunch of Devil Summoners, and then that would be why. But
and then a low tier rapper came in and beat her up.
He got the what's it called? Like when someone like does most of the work and then someone scoops in and steals it.
RS syndrome.
No, there's like a name for it. Like if you're in Call of Duty and you shoot a guy to like 90% of his health is gone, and then some guy like steals the kill from you. Is there like a name for that?
I just call that stealing a kill.
I guess so, but yeah. So like to go back to the when she knew thing, I think it's definitely fair that she probably had an idea, but because of the filter effect on the voice, of like, okay, we don't really know exactly what that. I mean, it really could kind of be like interpret like to each of your interpretations, because if she knew, it would make sense why she didn't say anything, because she doesn't really have any proof and needs to find out. If she doesn't know, it would also still make sense. Like, my only thing with it is looking at how absolutely pissed she is when Arrow tells her and she rushes to the orphanage. If she was that mad, I feel like that to me was kind of the moment of like, yeah, like she's this pissed because she now knows that that's who either killed Paul or was responsible for it, of that kind of thing,
Yeah, well, but at the same time, like, the fact that he's pretending to be him, that doesn't automatically mean that he killed him. Even though it's probably most likely.
But we found out that, I think it was through...
I thought Melody told us beforehand that, like, she had been kind of holding it back.
Yeah.
But, like, she knew that it wasn't Paul. Yeah, that's all she knew.
But that wasn't until after that they had already met Raven. So what I'm saying is, she probably saw Iron Mask, and then she later saw Raven, and then she was able to just put 2 and 2 together and figure out that Raven was pretending to be Iron Mask.
I'll say this. I loved at least them finally showing, because when we did find out that Raven is Iron Mask, there was a real worry for me of, okay, game, don't
Character assassination.
Yeah, well, because there were two things that could really fuck it up. Is that it happened off screen and we never see it. So I needed to know when and how Paul died and Raven became Iron Mask, because it would have felt really cheap if it was like, oh, it happened in between the first boss fight and the second boss fight in the towers. Like, something like that, you know? Like, the fact that you never meet Paul in the game yourself was, I think, a really cool and interesting idea. But the other thing with it at the same time, especially because I've done more playthroughs and stuff and going through the Soul Matrix, I will say, I really think they should have developed at least one more cutscene to Milady and Paul, because I don't know when people are going to start saying this, but pretty sure Paul was definitely grooming Milady if he was a full grown-ass man when he saved her.
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of bothered me. It's like, she's a kid and he's clearly not aged that much.
He's either a really ugly teenager, a late teenager, or very surprisingly young for an older man.
And I mean, Milady, she looked like she was like, she looked like she was about 10.
She looked, I'd say she looked 14 max. But that's being, like, generous.
You know what they say, watching your friends and family burn around you really does make you look younger, though. Couldn't she have been just as passionate about going through with Iron Mask's original vision without her being his lover? Like, I feel like she could have still been his right-hand man without them having to have clearly had sex.
Or, like, an adopted daughter or something.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, they could have even gone, and, like, want to kind of go and do the Metal Gear or the Old Boy thing with it. That's still fine, but I don't think it should just immediately just be, I met him and I fell in love with him right away.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the only kind of sad part, because I like the dynamic between her being the main villain's right-hand man and now your party member, but then there's still never that moment where, like, oh, this is why you love him. Like, it explains why she goes along with his plan for sure, and it explains kind of the ideology and where everyone's head's at, but I feel like we never got that moment where, like, okay, this is why you're in love with him. Besides, this is a guy who saved me and changed my future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, at least the nice thing for me is I think every other character outside of Milady's kind of backstory in, like, surroundings, I think Arrow and Saizo will make up for it, like, tenfold in terms of how all of their characters are very well fleshed out and very well explained.
Yeah, can we also talk about how Saizo is, like, the biggest simp in, like...
No!
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
He's not. Explain yourself.
What do you don't think he's a simp?
Not at all. He's a true man. Explain yourself.
Because he keeps, like, trying to get back together with the girl that's literally trying to kill him.
I'm gonna disagree hard, but I want you to finish your thoughts. Do your complete sentence, and then I want to hear from Ozzy. And then if Ozzy doesn't say what I'm gonna say, I'll explain myself. Because I've talked about this before, like in private. But I think if you look at Saizo's mannerisms and stuff through the story and just think simp, I think you took all the wrong notes. Do you have any other things you want to say? Because I'm of a full thing ready for this.
Okay, maybe simp's not the right term, but it's just like, this girl is trying to kill you, and you're still
this girl killed him. Straight up, she did kill him.
Okay,
she didn't kill him directly, she helped kill him.
Yeah.
But then, later, when you're like fighting her as a boss, like, it's pretty clear that she's trying to kill you there, but Saizo's just Ash.
They actually make a point to say it's the only boss fight where they were explicitly like, they are not trying to kill you, they are literally just buying time.
Both times, yeah. Both times you fight Ash, Ringo makes comment to her, being, you're holding back. They all know that she's trying to not kill him.
Like, it is funny to be like, oh yeah, Saizo's simp. In reality, he's like the ultimate housewife.
She killed me a bunch of times.
That is fair. No, but, like, Saizo is honestly one of the most wholesomely developed relationships canon relationships I've seen in the series. his like genuine dedication to Ash is reinforced so many times because it's very much like you could see him as being like, you know, a total player. Like he's got all the, you know, nice fancy clothes. Even Ash is like, saw him buying like women's clothes. Is he cheating on me? Oh gosh.
That was a good side quest.
No, yeah, but like he is very dedicated to just he found this girl, he really cares about her, and his future, like even before he realizes that he wants to go back to like doing devil summoning in a just like a self-fulfillment kind of way, his main thing is he just really wants to be with Ash and give her the happy future that she doesn't believe she can have. And I freaking love that.
So you hit a lot of the good points, but so like I'm gonna give a couple other little ones for it of just like he is constantly in a weird in a really personal state every time he is with Ash, because if you notice, he basically turns into a very different person of how you would expect someone in that situation to act, and obviously you would think the moral of his character is just going to be, I'm mad, ex-girlfriend killed me, let me get revenge. Whereas it was a lot more sad the more you kind of sat on it and stewed on it, of like, he knew the second she did it. Like, there's never a, oh my god, Ash, I can't believe you killed me. Like, he knew why she did it. He knew the situation she was in. And I loved the way that they, like, probably calling it summoner's karma isn't like the most like clean term or whatever with it, but that whole kind of philosophy behind it I really loved, of them just thinking that this is an inescapable cycle that we're just constantly going to be trapped in, and so she thought, this is the only thing I can do to kind of help get us out of this situation, and that he basically kind of felt guilty for putting her in that, because like one of their best moments I think of when they're still dating is when their house is on fire, you see in the quest. And he pulls his gun out, and she's more shocked that he still had his comp than the house being on fire. And so it was a lot of things being like, this was a really complicated relationship for such a long time, that her killing him never upset him as much as the fact of him losing her, because of the world that, like, in the world they live in the life that they live, because he knew she wasn't wanting to leave him. And they kind of get into this, they have the conversation without you seeing it. That's where a lot of the conversation Fig has with Saizo when you see them fighting. Of like, Fig wants to know that the reason he's still going after Ash isn't just because he wants to get her back, because he like owns her. Of like, he has to really like make sure he knows what he's doing when it comes to her, and isn't just chasing after something like it's his property. So, like, I can definitely see where the simp thing comes in, or, like, where it's like, oh, dude, yeah, he's just, like, chasing after, like, his ex or whatever. Whereas for me, he's, like, he's so aware of how messy it all is that he just wants to be with her. Because, like, there's even that moment that I really love after the tower, when everyone comes back and he's at the bar with her, being like, I'm ready to bail. Like, he would leave your party instantly. He would leave it, all of that, because Iron Mask is out of the picture in terms of what they needed right then and there, and they could leave, and yeah, the end of the world still might happen or whatever, but he wants to worry about her more than anything, but she knows that he has to take care of this, and like, that's why that relationship was always so nice to me, of them. Then you kind of slowly seeing her for the rest of the story, being in the world still, but realizing, hey, I can't be with you during this. Like, I'll be watching behind you and making sure you're okay. Like, I really think their relationship, the way that was written, it could have been handled so messy, so stereotypy, but I thought it was handled with a lot of maturity, and I really, like, seriously, Saizo gets the best story, the best the best backstory, the best kind of future, the best ending. Like, he really gets spoiled with, like, everything with it.
Like, not to harp too much on Saizo, because obviously we have, like, plenty of other things we can talk about.
Shut up, Arrow.
Yeah, but like, especially in that second Soul Matrix scene, like you were talking about, that's like absolutely one of my favorite scenes in the game. Another thing about that is like, I think that, you know, what is the Summoner's Karma thing plays a really big part in that, because, you know, you mentioned that he took out his comp and she gets upset about that, but then he remarks how she also had her comp on her, so clearly both of them had that, you know, like, even though they finally felt like they found that peace and they could get out of that life, they also had that insecurity or like stress of at any moment all of this could fall apart. Our house could literally burn down, and we'd be stuck in this cycle. And he's very much trying to save her from that cycle more than even saving himself. And it's just
my last question I at least want to ask, just so that you can kind of give your last little piece on it, Gnarly. How did you feel about his fourth level, where you saw the future with him and Ash? How did you feel about that ending?
I don't think I got that far in his sector.
Literally,
wow,
the best part of his story. Can we tell you what it is?
Oh, wait, so you never got the true ending?
I guess not. The only sector I got that high with was Melodies, because I thought because once she was the first person I got up to 100, and then I fought all the bosses in her. Or no, it wasn't Melody, it was Arrow. But I got to that last part of his sector, and at that point I wasn't expecting that the game would give me enough choices to get everyone else up to 100.
So you actually can, on your first playthrough, if you do every single talk and side quest, you can get them all over to level 100.
Okay, well I must have missed a few of them.
Prepare for us to give you a very long explanation at the end of what the quote-unquote true ending is, even though it's not. They're both different endings, but so Ozzy,
a good ending.
Do you want to describe the fourth future Saizo's arc?
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics of it. But it's basically
it's burned into me.
Well, okay, because basically what it is, from what I remember, is Saizo is sitting there for a very long time, just kind of sitting on an invisible bench, just kind of chilling. And then you finally see what it is him waiting for Ash, and Ash being like, "Oh yeah, we gotta do this Devil Summoner mission. We're going into I think basically a haunted house, and they're questing together. They're doing it freelance, just helping on the ground level, but then also you find out they have a kid, and that I think Saizo leaves to pick up the kid.
So,
but
you're kind of right. So Ash comes back from getting groceries,
right? Okay.
To bring home, and he's finishing up a mission, and then something comes up where she then goes off and does the devil summoning mission, and then he gets sent home, and the line is to go check up on our kid. Basically meaning that in this future, not only does he end up being with Ash, and they both still end up being devil summoners, freelance devil summoners, but they finally started a family together.
Which, another thing I do really love about that is, when you do get the true or good ending, whatever you want to call it, they very much know, because all of their futures are very, I think they're all great. They say a lot about each character and kind of the direction they're going in. But I like, because Melodies, without getting too much into it, her plan is to become, essentially a new leader of Phantom Society and take it in a better direction. Arrow is still kind of figuring himself out, but wants to, as he puts it, fight to stop the fighting, which seems like much bigger things. But, Saizo, who his future as envisioned is much clearer, and he just wants that perfect, family life and, self-satisfaction. His is described in the ending as being the hardest path to follow, which I find really interesting. Because he has a much more deep, interpersonal path to take, but it is very much the happiest ending out of all of them if he actually succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you want my opinion about, what you were saying about Saizo?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I get what he's trying to do, but she killed him. Well, she didn't kill him. She helped kill him. If I died, I don't think I would be. If someone that I knew really close killed me, I don't think I would be all that happy and trying to give them another chance and stuff.
I don't know. I think
a lot that goes into this also should probably be the headspace that Ozzy and I are in, of two people who have been in very long relationships, and if both of us got murdered by our significant other, I think our first reaction would just be, "Oh, why did you do that?" Wouldn't be, bitch.
If you feel like you genuinely know that person, your reaction most likely isn't going to be a deep betrayal, I never knew you. It's going to be, okay, obviously something was up, and with Ash's circumstance in general, Saizo is very aware that they are in a situation where they are easily, blackmailed or like put on hit lists, whatever. They don't have a lot of choice if they actually have like a gun put to their head. So Saizo immediately, when you go in like to talk to him in when you do a soul hack, he's like, "Yeah, I get it. I just want to find her and talk to her. I want to sort this out. I want to help her. All right, let's go." Yeah. So like I very much think it makes sense.
Well, I mean, but the thing about Ash, like, betraying Saizo, I mean, she could have at least, like, given Saizo a warning or really just told him. Because, like, I get the whole, like, oh, yeah, she's on a hit list or she's under a lot of pressure. But, I mean, like, she couldn't have done anything to try to, like, make the situation better.
I mean, it was either that or Zoma was going to eat her, probably.
Yeah, like, you do see, they did have, like, a decent conversation before he actually got killed, of them trying to, like, rationalize the situation and talk it out. Because, like, once Saizo even sees that she's there, he already knows he's dead. Like, he already knows it, so he's just trying to get those last words out to her and, like, basically, you know, try and help her, saying, you don't have to be forced into this situation. We can escape this. You're not stuck to the devil's karma, or the summoner's karma. So, like, there is a very clear understanding going both ways. It's just that Ash feels so trapped in it that she doesn't really feel like she has a choice, if she even did, literally.
Ooh, also, real quick aside, did we all play with English dub?
Yeah, I did.
I played with both.
Okay, well, your main playthrough, what'd you play with?
My main one was English.
Okay, so I at least wanted to at least give a quick shout out to everybody, because I think there's literally no one who does a bad job voicing anyone in this. And I don't know how I never recognized that Ash was Kira Buckland. Like, the fact that I didn't realize that until I beat the game, like, blew my mind.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that I didn't like the performance of. Like, there are definitely some I like way more than others, but I thought everyone did great.
Well, we're not going to talk about how Arrow was voiced by not Yuri Lowenthal.
Well, yeah, that I can't say is a complaint, but that is just weird direction choice. I'm at least glad he didn't sound like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. That's all I was glad of. Like, I do want to at least go into Arrow, because, like, so Arrow, you got all the way to his vision quest at the very end and saw his possible future, right?
Oh yeah, I did.
So let's then kind of dive into Arrow, because Arrow definitely has the most kind of characters to sort of like talk about and everything with it. So what did you think of Kaburagi and his relationship? So if you, I mean, talking about exes, Kaburagi might as well be Arrow's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, like, honestly, like, I thought it was kind of a similar situation, but at the same time, you don't, like, I didn't see Arrow trying to, like, he wasn't, like, trying to forgive Kaburagi and all that stuff. It was more like, oh yeah, this guy killed me and I'm trying to get to the bottom of why he did it. But, and it's like...
That's interesting, that's your takeaway. See, for me...
I think it's a very different dynamic.
Yeah, I really liked the aspect of Kaburagi and Arrow's relationship being they never asked why. They knew their ideologies so strongly that they knew the only way for them to continue on was with one of them killing the other.
That's the thing. Like, the point of conflict between them wasn't like that same kind of like misunderstanding of like I've been betrayed in that sense. It was more so they both had the same idea for which this adds to the fact that Phantom Society and Yatagarasu are not that different, but they both had the same idea for the world's future and how to fix it. It's just they thought that in the end they would be on the same side. They both essentially wanted the same thing. It's just that put them on two different sides of the war, which Kaburagi wasn't aware of, hence shooting Arrow in the face.
Yeah, well, Kaburagi seemed a little more enthusiastic about shooting Arrow in the face than Ash did with Saizo. I will say that.
Okay, that is one funny thing to me.
You're also then forgetting what did Kaburagi find out before shooting Arrow in the face?
He was a double agent?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I find that funny, because as much as the intro is kind of like a prologue, it still kind of embellishes everything to look cool. where
100%.
Kaburagi is standing there over like a giant crowd of devil summoners, does this little smirk, without a care, shoots Arrow in the head. Meanwhile, you do see that scene in one of his like, I guess Vision Quest, if you want to refer to it as that, where Kaburagi is not happy. He is very much like basically in tears, saying like why, and then like shooting him just out of like desperation. Like it's not really I am eager to do this. It's gosh dang it, why do I have to do this? Okay, let's just get it over with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I will say, I wish well, it's weird. I like that the game was liberal with when they used it. I loved every instance when, instead of Ringo being the battle transition, it was the appropriate character in the story that you were fighting. Like the fact that when you're fighting Raven or when you're fighting Kaburagi, it's Arrow, and then fighting Ash is Saizo, and then fighting Iron Mask is Melody and stuff like those were all really, really like kind of smart of how they used that with the characters. But like, I think at least because one of the earlier moments on like that talk at the end. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not the talk. I don't think it's either. It's either right before you fight Kaburagi or right after, where Ringo basically is like, "What is wrong with you two? Why are you fighting to kill each other and stuff like that?" Because it's like, to any normal human being, your reaction to this would just be, "Can't we just be Steven Universe and talk out our feelings and then not fight each other?" It's like, no, that's not this world. We can't do that. There wasn't going to be a moment where they hugged it out and then he joined your party. As much of the power of friendship would have been fun, and I think that kind of goes back into the general tone of the story that I really liked with this. Of like, Persona would have still had you fight him, but then he wouldn't have died and joined your party or something like that. You know, like I could have easily seen a game where Ash, Raven, and Kaburagi join you and don't die in the end, you know?
That's the thing. There were not many scenarios I could envision that would be true to the characters where they beat Kaburagi and Arrow's like, alright, now join my team. Like, they were very clung to their ideals. Like, Arrow definitely loosens in his ideals later just because of existential crisis. But, like, Kaburagi is set in... He is an agent of the Phantom Society because he wants to see the world change. And not much was going to change that.
You know what's funny? I just realized we have two groomers in this game. We have
Paul and Raven.
We have Paul and Yatagarasu. Yatagarasu, the whole orphanage is just one big groomers.
I mean, that one they explicitly say it's grooming them into being devil summoners.
Pretty much.
Listen, guys, it's not a good look, but I mean, hey, at least we're still taking these kids off the street. I gotta ask this question about the orphanage. What was that ghost that they saw? Who's that dead kid that they were talking to as little baby Arrow and little baby Rocky?
I don't know, it was just staring, though.
Also, that girl that you see at the orphanage with, like, the book, did they ever explain what her deal was?
I mean, she was just a kid.
Is that Melody, all of the people she loved in her life were dead by the time the story started, so she needed someone to feel human with.
So, okay, so we'll just give this random girl artwork, but we're not gonna, like, explain anything about her.
I think the story was better off giving her artwork than not because of the scene she's in. Because if she was just, like, faceless NPC kid who is, like, having this really personal connection with Melody, when Melody is breaking, like, having a mental breakdown, was literally about to essentially set an orphanage on fire. Like, if just a random NPC comes in, it's like, hey Melody, read me a story, and then she breaks down crying even more, it would not hit nearly as hard. The portrait makes it feel like she'd have more importance, like, plot-wise, but I think it was much better to, not force a plot role for her, but definitely give her that, like, extra character.
I mean, I guess, but I think I don't know, I think in order, like, I think it would have been better if they had just, like, given her, like, some kind of role, even if it's not a super huge one, than just giving this random person artwork and be like, oh yeah, you're my mom, or something like that.
I mean, I would say that's a role. It's just not like, she doesn't have some crazy secret power that she's another MacGuffin who actually has a covenant And actually, okay, maybe that could have been an interesting moral dilemma. Give a kid a covenant.
Eat this kid, Melody. We got to eat this kid to get the covenant out.
Oh no!
Now, this isn't Digital Devil Saga.
I mean, he tried. Zenon tried really hard without saying a single word, apparently. But I always want to say, I didn't get mom vibes from the whole, like, child thing. For me, the child always felt like a very surface level, big sister, this is how I feel. Especially with them both being, like, blonde hair and stuff with it. Of just, like, she was an orphan, that's another orphan. Obviously, she's feeling alone and vulnerable in the world when she's not putting up her guard and stuff with it. I think if the game didn't have the other side quests or the dialogue that Ringo has with Melody of like, hey, how do you feel about this? And them kind of talking through it. Like, if the girl was in it like twice and there wasn't any reflection scenes, I could definitely kind of be like, what's the point of you? Because literally none of the other kids matter at all. So it's the thinnest of relationships for sure, but it at least was never one where I was like, this was a waste of a cutscene.
Well, because I think it's important because it's like it's essentially the only relationship that Melody has at all that is not directly.
They're all gone.
It's the only one that's not directly like a devil summoner. Like everyone she knows are all devil summoners. They're all Phantom Society, like higher ups, Yatagarasu enemies, whatever. That one kid is like the only person who she makes a connection with, who actually brings her down to a ground level. So again, she was willing to kill Raven at any cost, including the deaths of children, which, you know, is reflecting her own experience of other people like Raven doing anything, including like killing children to get to their cause. So her having that connection, seeing that personal level to it, and finally having that realization of maybe Paul's absolutism was not something that she could really go through with, it adds a much bigger layer to her character.
Yeah, I can see that.
Really, I'm curious, kind of going from the orphanage to the guy in charge of it. How did you feel about Raven as a character, from meeting him to obviously then the big twist and whatnot?
Well, I mean, okay, so Raven as a character, like, I kind of understand, like, what they're trying to do with him. He's like, you know, he's like a, I guess for lack of a better word, he's like a war veteran. He killed a bunch of innocent people. He has PTSD from that. And
I like that you give him, like, the flashback definitely is almost like a non-flashback, but, like, because I knew the context of it, it felt like a genocide veteran. It's like, oh yeah, I'm this guy who just murdered a bunch of people.
It's like that meme with, like, the girl and the, like, hanged people behind her, and then she's, like, taking care of kids. That's basically Arrow.
Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you know what I'm talking. I know you guys know what I'm
talking
about.
That's why I'm saying Jesus.
Oh no.
Well, okay, you come up with the better comparison then.
No, you nailed it. You hit the nail on the forehead. Unfortunately, you fucking 10 out of 10 comparison.
But the thing is, like, we don't really know much about why exactly he, like, feels that way or what exactly he did aside from that very short cutscene. I think if they had if he had more time to explain himself, then he would have been a little more relatable as a villain.
Wait,
so do you
so
feel
what
like
is it you
should have had more than the... Because, like, obviously there's two moments it basically gives you of him talking to Fig once she found out about the secrets of the orphanage, and then the flashback where it shows the kid who's controlled by the demon he had to kill. So, like, do you think they should have, like, had more moments of him kind of struggling with being an agent of Yatagarasu, or, like, how would you have done it?
Maybe something like one of the higher-ups at Yatagarasu is ordering him to fire or, like, kill civilians or something like that, and he shows hesitation, but then he has to comply.
I mean, I already thought that was the implication, because that's basically, like, that was the scene we get of him having to kill that kid, where he sits there hesitating, can't even look them in the eye, and then finally was like, this is what I have to do, looks at them, bam. Like, and even before then, I thought we still had a pretty good idea, just from what he was talking about, of, you know, what his ideals were, kind of the trauma he had prior. It's just that only at that moment we truly see it through his eyes of how horrific it was. I already thought it was pretty, like, well iterated, but I understand why people might have issue with it. I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, in that cutscene, it was just that one kid. Maybe if there were, like, some more people there that he had to kill, or maybe they showed some, like, other Yatagarasu members doing it next to him.
I thought the idea of it was that was just, like, one kid out of many of, like, innocent people, and that was just, like... Because you literally see, like, even though everything is already on fire, that is one, which it could have been just the one kid that affected him that bad, or many others of them literally begging for him to help them, that they're in pain, and him having to go through and just keep killing them.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying... Well, I mean, I'm sure that's what's implied, but what I'm saying is I think they should have showed that. That would have... I guess that would have made him a little more relatable.
Did you feel like the limitations behind all the flashbacks showing the bare minimum in the Soul Matrix kind of stopped it from feeling like in the full context of what was going on? Like, do you kind of wish it was just a, hey, let's just show a flashback with everything that was around them?
Yeah, like, yeah, pretty much. That's how I feel, because, like, I feel like... I'm not saying I didn't like the Soul Matrix, I'm just saying it probably would have been more effective had they just... like, you know, done a normal flashback, but, I mean, I imagine the reason they did it the way they did with the Soul Matrix is, well, to save money.
No, for sure. I mean, there are so many little things of, like, when you really think about it, this game basically has 5 dungeons,
like
so
the
yeah,
flashbacks,
like, the game doesn't hide it.
The flashbacks of the Soul Matrix, the characters don't even move, they just, like, kind of teleport around and hear dialogue, but...
Oh, if you think that's lazy, Ozzy will appreciate this because we've actually seen it. When you finish the 5th and the longest and the most demanding level of the Soul Matrix, this is what happens. You finish the secret boss, your Soul Matrix ghost looks at you, you smile, you look at each other, and then the camera pans up. That's all. No doubt. There's nothing.
Yeah, that
just
too.
Floats away.
Just thinking about it. And I like the little text box, because remember it says, you ventured as deep into the soul as you can. This is all you can do in the Soul Matrix. Like, that's
it!
Like, honestly, it would have been better if it was just like a fucking like catchphrase played or like something. It was like, that was like, okay, that was one of the few moments in this game where you went, and the money ran out.
Well, okay, because I wasn't expecting anything more than that, honestly, because they literally tell you beforehand, they're like, just letting you know, you don't have to do floor 5 unless you want a trophy. And only then, you only have to do one of them.
Oh,
like, the only reason...
You want the platinum.
You don't have to do all 3 for the platinum, I didn't think.
You have to do all 3 to get the demons, because each different floor has a different demon.
You are right, okay. Yeah, but, like, other than that, like, they tell you straight up, they're like, you're not getting any other story stuff from this. Just, you don't have to bother. You've seen all you can see.
And I mean, just because there's no story, I like the 5th floor. The 5th floor are interesting. They are, like, cool little, like, designs and stuff for it. But yeah, like, if, again, we're just talking story, it's nothing. Nothing at all. So it's like, even, I know this is a tiny thing, but, like, when you're on the 4th floor... Actually, I think it happens on the 4th floor... And depending on who you're fighting, one of your Aeon missions or your like digital like side quests can be fighting a main story character again. I would have really liked it if they used that opportunity to like have them talk, because like as we saw with Fig talking to Raven while soul hacking him, I really liked that whole aspect of, hey, I can still talk to you even though I'm dead, or even though if I'm just a memory or a construct of like, it would have been nice to kind of have maybe a what happened after you beat the game conversation before having to fight them again, you know? That's just trying too hard. We do have to talk about this though real quick, because I am curious where you landed on, especially you, Gnarly. Did you like the twist that Raven was Iron Mask?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of neutral about it. Because, I mean, I figured that Raven was going to have to play some kind of a bigger role. So...
I may be stupid. I've heard a couple people in my comments say, oh, I saw it coming a mile away. I did not see it coming at all.
Okay, because I thought they did... Okay. Because if you're looking out for a twist, like, if you know twists are coming, like, you can always be like, oh, there's these characters. what if these characters swapping around different roles?
Well,
As someone who wasn't really keeping an active eye out for like major plot twists like that, I got there and you have the scene of Arrow and Raven looking at each other. I'm like, what the heck? Oh! And I had a little mini freak out.
yeah, well, and I mean, it also, like, with the whole thing of, you know, Iron Mask being Raven, that does kind of, like, make his whole motivation make a lot more sense, because, you know, like, toward the middle of the game, like, you go a pretty long while without actually getting any real plot developments, but then it kind of, like, it all kind of starts to come together at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, if
Because-
Raven was always Iron Mask, why does he scream Melody when you're fighting her for the first time? So if you're fighting Iron Mask in the subway with Zenon for the first time, and you're picking Melody, so like different characters will say things depending on who's selecting them for what attack. If you're Melody and you attack Iron Mask, there's a chance that when you're selecting him, he will yell one of two lines where he screams Melody.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
was like-
I mean, the answer is simple because you see it throughout the rest of the encounter. He's literally just taunting her.
That was the line read? Like, for me, it felt more like... I don't know, it was like... I don't know, it's like weird, it's like, what are you taunting, I guess? That I killed you? It's just weird because, like, Iron Mask and Raven's tone is very... Like, there's only one moment he cracks before his mask actually comes off, and not metaphorically cracks. Like, the moment when Zenon dies and the fake Covenant he realizes is real, like, that's a moment he, like, genuinely freaks out. But, like,
yeah.
in that moment when he has so much control, I wonder if that's almost like an AI bug. Like, I'd be curious to actually go to the Japanese one and see, like, what the line delivery is there. Because I wouldn't be surprised if that's just, hey, if you're fighting, this is something that Iron Mask will say. Because that... I feel like him screaming that would have made sense in the last boss fight, or even the tower boss fight, but not the first boss fight where Zenon literally cannot be killed.
Okay. I kind of get what you mean.
Should we talk about everyone's favorite and most expanded upon character in the whole story of Soul Hackers?
Nana. Oh, Zenon.
No, this character
Fig?
has less lines.
We definitely have to talk about Fig at some point.
No. Well, Fig's got to be last.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about Ringo.
That's also true, yeah.
Why
Pretty
is there
simple.
no
I at least
option?
want to see what you guys thought about Zenon, because I feel like obviously people are gonna say he was a weak villain. I think because he had literally no personality. But I'm curious how you felt about, like, the lore we learned and the reasoning behind him existing as a Zoma.
Well, I thought that was actually kind of like a cool reference to the
Yeah, I
original
like that.
Soul Hackers, but I mean, I don't really have any complaints about Zenon's character because he's basically just a puppet, and
Yeah, he's a
what he
tool.
is. He doesn't even talk.
Mm. Well, he goes,
You guys
ah!
want to guess my one beef with Zenon?
Uh-huh.
They were too fucking cheap to even animate him turning his mask off. I mean, like, lifting his mask up or, like, turning it down. Of, like, he literally eats people through his mask.
Hey, that's
Just
dedication.
how it is sometimes.
That's not dedication. That's drinking milk through a sock. Can you do it? Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, but does he care? Listen, I'm just surprised that he ate all of Mangetsu without getting a single
Hey.
drop of blood on him.
Yo,
Hey, he doesn't want
We
it-
need to shout out that scene is being fucking brilliant, because there was a
It's
moment
awesome.
early on of, like, why would she not just soul hack everybody? Like, outside
Yeah.
of the game saying she should give everyone ouchies and headaches, like, the fact that, like, Raven and Iron Mask realize, hey, let's test out this theory. If I eat this human being alive, can she still soul hack him? I thought was so fucking cool. Of, like, if there's not a body, she can't do anything.
Because everyone we see die, they have a pretty fair reason for why they're not revived. Because friggin', I forget his name, but the scientist at the start, very much because
Well,
Fig does not...
Ichiro gets eaten too.
No, I thought he was just left,
Oh,
like,
no,
laying
you're right,
there.
because Fig finds his body,
Yeah.
yeah, so he gets
Yeah.
dunked in the tank. That's true.
But Fig did not want to commit to soul hacking unless it was, like, absolutely vital, and even then she was still shaky on it. Kaburagi, if they revived him, he would have just killed Arrow again. And then yeah, Mangetsu just gets eaten. So
I'm glad at least. I thought actually you would have had beef with Zenon, so I'm glad you liked him being a Zoma. I thought that was kind of cool of them talking about it. I will say, I felt like especially, again, I know this just goes back to the game trying to limit its scope. I feel like there were moments where they were going to incorporate phases of the moon into the game, and then they just removed it.
mm-hmm.
Like the fact that just the moon happens in the background without you doing anything, I'm like, oh, that stinks.
I wish they had let us make our own Zoma like in Soul Hackers 1.
You know, would it have been as cute and chubby and green?
Yeah.
And
you could have named it too.
Ooh.
That is true. I was going to say a spoiler, but we should probably talk about the other Zoma later, because I think at this point, we should at least talk about... We should at least finally talk about Ringo and Fig. I think we should at least start with Ringo, because ironically, Ringo, while being a great protagonist, is a good conduit for the player. Really, Ringo has no story until maybe the end, and then most of it's more prominent when you do New Game Plus.
Well, I haven't done New Game Plus, but what I was going to say earlier was, I wish there was a way to romance Saizo as Ringo.
Oh, that's so wrong.
Heck no!
But the
Homewrecker! Homewrecker!
Fuck Ash!
Damn. That's what we want to do. That's what we're trying to make happen.
Listen. I do get what you mean by Ringo doesn't necessarily have a explicit story beforehand. I definitely say that her and Fig are following kind of the same character arc, just in two different directions.
Oh, that's what I meant of
yeah.
So nearly really the only real thing outside of a couple of boss quests and stuff you miss in New Game Plus, you finally have a chance, because the big thing that you find at the end of the game when basically Fig becomes the final villain is there's that moment they have when they're at the apartment or the hideout, and Fig's like, you don't even know me. You don't even know me on any level that you knew everyone else. Her soul points were at 0. So you realize, did you ever invite Fig out to drink? No, you only ever talked when you were with everyone else and stuff like that. So in New Game Plus, what I thought was such a tiny little thing so far was now in New Game Plus you can invite Fig out to drink with you and have story conversations that are only in New Game Plus that add a lot of extra weight and context to the ending.
Why is that New Game Plus though? Is there any
because
if you were best friends with her before she was the bad guy, why would she have turned into the bad guy?
It is a very good thematic payoff to the idea that Ringo never really tried to reach out to Fig.
The way I always saw it is that because Fig was the one holding on to the covenants, that's why she didn't go out drinking, is because she had to stay at the safe house.
I mean, even regardless, because
she says it in the first one. She's like, "Why are you even inviting me?" So I think in terms of your side of it, yeah, that would make sense of why she's not going out on missions. She's just being memey and stuff like that. But I think it could only work in New Game Plus without breaking it. Because if you were chummy with her the way you can be in New Game Plus, you would just be like, okay, this has total ludonarrative dissonance. This makes no sense why I would be feeling this way about her.
It is very much Ringo putting in the effort regardless, throwing caution to the wind of no matter what, I am going to actually make that connection with Fig, which I didn't expect it to. It does still make it jarring for the people who are taking New Game Plus, the story dead seriously of Ringo still saying, I didn't try to know Fig.
Oh, imagine if they had $5 more and they had a New Game Plus exclusive ending that once you finish the fight with Iron Mask and Raven, there's a moment where they just have a heart-to-heart and then they can end it together of hey, we've all talked about it, we're all on the same page, I know where you're at. Because that moment after Raven dies, by the way, because I think I texted this to you right after it happened, Ozzy, Nearly, how awesome is it the moment when you finish the boss fight with Raven and he's dead? it's just silence on him dead as your results screen. I thought that was so fucking perfect.
Yeah.
So like they did they have a lot of really great moments like that of just like, hey, we're not celebrating this. Like this is a shitty feeling and things like that. And I loved how from the soul hack all the way to her kind of recovering in that post fight, but you're not at the ending yet area with it of it had a lot of nice introspection without feeling like it brought down the story to a halt. Like at that point, I felt like it could have been the ending, but it never felt like, okay, I get it. There's going to be one more fight. What are we doing? Like, let's hurry it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
Also, super big shout outs to the writers. You would have absolutely fucked over this whole game story, and I would be shitting on it so much if the reason Fig did what she did at the end was because she loved Raven. I was so scared there was going to be, Raven, I love you. I'm gonna continue your legacy. I'm so glad they that they talk about that, because like I'm glad they like specifically are like, I'm not just doing this to continue Raven's like legacy, or like the fact that they have a full conversation about her reasons and explanations for it. I really appreciate it, because like were either of you two worried that, especially when the soul hack happened, I'm like, oh god, please don't become like his Harley Quinn or something.
I mean, personally, I do think that she did have like romantic feelings for Raven.
I mean, are we gonna talk about the DLC?
Well, you didn't talk. Listen, the DLC happens before, during, and after the story.
Well, I'm asking because like they talk about that in one of the conversations.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I'd say talk about what you thought if Fig was in love with Raven or not, and then we can talk about that scene with Nana.
I mean, I kind of figured it out before, but like, I don't really have a lot to say. It's just like, yeah, she agrees with Raven, but I also think she kind of has feelings for him. But But what I was gonna say was, in like one of the dinner scenes with Nana, that's like, you're like, it's Ringo, Melody, Fig, and Nana are all talking about girl stuff, and then they start talking about who they like. And then they invite Raven along, and then Fig is like getting all embarrassed. He's like, oh, I might have, I kind of have feelings for Raven, but I don't, so...
Okay, that's the problem. I didn't see that scene, but by the time my playthrough I did the DLC, Fig was gone and Raven was dead.
Yeah, that's because if you wait till after that point in the game, you just straight up don't get that scene. But if you do it when you're actually supposed to, you're gonna see it.
Mm-hmm.
The Ozzy, you'd know this if you played the game 3 times instead of 2 times.
Listen, I watched my brother's third playthrough. It's time for a 4th.
That's true. If it's a real 10 out of 10, you'd play the game 10 times.
Exactly.
But no, I will say, that is weird that cutscene is like the only missable one, at least I think with Nana. But I took that as kind of more like having a crush as opposed to I love him, because like obviously they have feelings for each other, but like my worry was we were gonna drop the L word of like, I love him, this is why I must continue his legacy, and blah 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 blah.
That's the thing though. I love that they put it more in the angle of they share a very common ideal. Fig, obviously when she first kind of relates that to him, doesn't understand the extent of what he's doing because she doesn't know he's Iron Mask. But once she kind of rationalizes that, sees everything he goes through, she's like, okay, yeah, no, like, human suffering, like, it is not worth, and like, it cannot continue, just at all costs. So just having that, almost an extremist version of his ideal, where they're both in that desperation, I think is really good.
Well, I wouldn't say it's an extremist version. I'd say she's basically just trying to continue what what Raven couldn't.
I don't know. I think it's definitely a much bigger extreme, considering her plan is to brainwash the entire world.
Raven, he was gonna like destroy it. She was going to.
I took Raven's plan as more of a Thanos. If he was going to kill the old generation and let the new have a cleaner like have a clean slate and start over.
Like that's the thing. It's very much he wanted a reset, while she wanted control.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to have that explicit control over everyone, so that they didn't even have like an option to like have any kind of conflict in their future, because they just would not have the like mental capacity to do so. They just would not have any free will. Well, Raven still wanted people to have that free will, to have that freedom and like that peace in life, but and you know, it's still misguided. It's not like it's perfectly fallible logic, but his idea was, if we wipe out the current conflict and design a new world around that peace, hopefully it'll make a better future for these kids.
Yeah, well, it's basically two different versions of law, pretty much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hers is definitely a much more like extremist law, though.
How did you guys feel once we all knew what Fig was going to do? That I again, kind of going back to a really powerful scene and a really good like shot, is that moment when you go back to Aeon and you see that like Flamma and them are all gone, like it's all red and like died out and stuff. But basically, Fig showed her, and she basically showed Aeon and Flamma their plan, and they were like, okay, that works in our simulation. If that's what you want to do, there you go. Like, I just loved that kind of like, almost like desolate, like it felt more violent than it really should in my head, of like that like bright colorful pink highway just turning into this dark red kind of like broken arena. The only thing I wish it would have affected the rest of the Soul Matrix, but I kind of understand like those are all based on personality. Money. That's true. That would have had to have two colors, but yeah, I love so much that if you have missions left over that you never turned into Flamma, like did either of you guys have those? Like where after Flamma had died, you had a mission to turn back in?
No.
So if you did that, this is what happens. You can still return the mission to Flamma, but since Flamma is no longer there and Aeon is quiet, it's you get a choice that just says, do you want to keep looking or do you want to go back, since there's nothing there? And if you look, it will have a thing where you walk around for a while and you find what would have been your quest reward. And then there's a really great line where it says, Flamma would have wanted you to have this after finishing this quest. I'm like, fuck.
Wow. No, that's because one of the things I love about that, like, in just kind of that space of everything being destroyed in the desolate, is you get there, and like, again, Fig is not a super unpredictable villain. Like, at least by the time you get to fighting Raven, it's mostly predictable. But I still do love the execution of, you know, they enter that world and it's like, what the heck is going on? Like, I thought we were trying to stop the world from being destroyed, and they're like, yeah, this isn't destroying the world, it's a new beginning. And very much like the two completely different interpretations Ringo and Fig have for what is, I guess, able to be determined as the same goal. And I think that's a really great way to frame that final conflict and just that entire chaos.
Mm-hmm. I'm just glad we didn't have to fight a boss of Mimi. I wouldn't have it in me.
What'd you guys think of the voice that replaced Mimi at the very end?
I know it's not Johnny and Bosch, but it fucking sounds like, just like Johnny
enemies
and
present.
Bosch.
You've been discovered.
Yeah.
No more enemies present.
I didn't mind it too much.
Guys? It sounded just like Johnny and Bosch to me, but I know it's not him.
I don't know. I again, it didn't bother me too much, but I remember watching my brother go through that and just having a friggin' rage every time that voice spoke.
Like more than Mimi?
I thought it was less annoying than Mimi, if I'm being honest.
That's the thing. I actually agree, because I think Mimi is much louder. Like, obviously, I find Mimi more appealing, but like, I don't know, something about that got to him.
How did you guys feel about the final dungeon and then the kind of interesting tones it took of the flooded out municipal building and then leading up into what's basically somebody's like rib cage and womb?
I mean,
oh yeah, they're just fetuses in the sky.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I just looked at the fetus. I'm like, what is this, Earthbound?
Did you realize you were walking through like what was essentially someone's body with the final
Yeah.
Yes.
kind of being ripped?
I don't really understand the whole aquarium thing though.
I took the aquarium basically of kind of being an essential thing of being like flooding the earth, starting over, or also being the equivalent of basically starting to break the world as it is, while also like washing away and starting something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I don't...
It's a very
all that
interesting aesthetic.
But, like, do they ever explain why the building is like that? Because going in beforehand, you'd think it's just another office building.
Well, the thing they explain is basically just, like, turning on the Omni system, just screwed with, like, space around them. That's basically all they say, which... I don't need to get into the super deep logistics of it. It's a friggin' RPG dungeon.
I'm just glad it wasn't just another building hallway, because I think that was my worry when I saw it was a municipal building.
Yeah, I mean, if they had done like if they had done it in the way they did Soul Hackers 1, they could have. I would have been fine with it just being a realistic building, but the dungeons, aside from like probably that one, I thought were all pretty boring. And like even
I like the tower.
You like the tower, even though like there's nothing going on in it.
And I thought the layout and like the actual traversal of it was fun. Aesthetically, it was fine.
I mean,
I think that you're getting your actual fucking soul sucked by not one but four different Mothmen, I found infinitely hilarious.
Oh yeah. I
mean, I think like I don't know. I just thought the dungeon designs were kind of bland. Like, it could have, like, I talked about this in my review, but I think if it had a first-person view, it could have worked as, like, a liminal, like, spaces like you see in that one gimmick account on Twitter, but the camera is only third person. Kind of hoping someone makes a first-person mod for the PC version.
I mean, I can see it work. I'll say this, especially after they added it in, this game is not meant for you to be played with Ringo at the middle of the screen with the camera zoomed out. It looks so weird.
Yeah, it's jarring.
Yeah, I don't know if this feature
I guess it's jarring either way, but
I have the camera zoomed all the way out. That way it looks more like Nocturne.
See, that does not look like that to me. It literally just looks like, because again they're going off the same kind of camera movement system. It literally is just Tokyo Mirage Sessions when you have her in the middle zoomed out. It is just TMS.
Oh,
but the map is just all over her. So like I hated that so much. That's why I was like I liked it being the Resident Evil up close butt shot like behind the shoulder.
Yeah, but I mean, are we also, like, speaking of the last dungeon, are we also going to talk about the one character from Soul Hackers 1 that appears and then just goes away, Azazel?
The one character. Victor's in this game.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, he's in the game.
There was also friggin' what's his name? It was like the Yatagarasu leader, or not leader, but like the higher up who's also just like a one-off.
Yeah, but okay, well, besides one-offs, because Azazel actually played, like, a pretty big role in the story.
Azazel,
okay, that's fair, yeah.
Azazel at least actually has art from Soul Hackers 1 he's on.
Yeah, but like, they make you, like, with the dialogue, it makes you think he's gonna be something bigger, but then, well, okay, for one thing, the game is already almost over. But then he just kind of, like, leaves. I'm like, is that them hinting at a Soul Hackers 3?
No, that to me was like, I at least give those two boss fights, like, because like the game, I was worried the game was going to try and give you a lore dump for both Yatagarasu's hierarchy and the Phantom Society. I'll at least say this, they didn't do the stupid trope that Persona and SMT does of, okay buddy, time to fight 4 angels or demons before the final boss. I liked the implications of why they would be coming after you, because obviously they are aware of the Covenants, they're trying to stop Fig. But the other thing was, I liked Yatagarasu's person, because it was a cool Ray Chase, just being Ray Chase character. He was thankfully not the subway attendant this time. I liked him being not the boss, because he was basically just the insurance policy of like, hey, if shit hits the fan, I'm here to clean it up. which then made it funny when I wiped the floor with him. But he is a good fight if you are equal level to him. And then for the Phantom Society, I thought that one was interesting. He's basically there because he can stop this, or at least he thinks he can stop this, but he wants to fuck with you. Like, he's not there to stop you. You're just kind of there along the way, and he wants to test you. And that's why clearly afterwards he's like, okay, I'm just gonna bail. Like, you're strong enough for this, so I'm gonna head out. And then we talked about his facial hair for too long.
Yeah, because the only other relevance he has is in, like, the good ending route with all the, like, 4th Soul Matrix stuff. I'm pretty sure it's implied that Melody's plan is just to kill him. Like that's, like, the first... I'm pretty sure, like, because they're like, yeah, what are you planning to do next? And she's like, oh, yeah, because we see that her future is wanting to reform Phantom.
We haven't told him yet. All right, so since you haven't seen it, Charlie, what do you think Melody's future is predicted in the Soul Matrix? So obviously with Arrow is kind of basically Raven 2.0 without murdering people. Saizo becomes a dad. What happens to Melody?
She gets a career in modeling or something.
Better. Ozzy, what happens?
Yeah, so she becomes either the leader of just Phantom overall, or like a major one, or basically made her own faction of the Phantom Society that is going against, like, as she calls it, the traditionalists. And she has her own plan that presumably is not as cataclysmic as Paul's was. And is basically just becoming the new Iron Mask.
That was the longest answer ever when all I needed you to say was, she is Iron Mask.
She is Iron Mask. Well, okay, because it's important, though, because in the sense that, like, she is doing something very different than Paul was. Which goes along with kind of what her character was.
Does she wear a mask?
She literally
does. She wears...
mask. She has her own custom one, too.
Oh, no. She's wearing the old one. She just cut it out into, like, a proper, like,
she's
Joker-ish like mask.
She Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Her new mask.
Okay.
I mean, it does also have the like red streak on it because of how that fight went.
Does this mean Kylo Ren is actually Iron Mask?
Yo. No, but from what I remember, it said that she was, like, looking out towards the administrators and wanting to essentially take them down. At least that's what I remember. But I know it was kind of vague, but yeah, otherwise Azazel doesn't do freaking anything.
Yeah. But, is there any... Well, are you guys ready to move on to the DLC now?
I'm ready to talk about gross food with Nana.
Woo!
Yeah, okay, so... Yeah, I thought the like, bonus story arc was, like... I thought it was kind of meh. If I'm being honest, like, Nana felt very shoehorned into the plot. And I think, like... I mean, I think the idea of the story is cool, but... Again, I feel like they were just kind of hurrying it along, and it could have been better. What about you guys?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. Like, I think Nana's a cute character. I think what they did with her was, once you realize where it's going, it's pretty predictable. They still, I guess, handled the resolution in a better way than they could have. And I don't really have any active complaints with it. I just think it was very quick, to the point. It's a nice little thing to do on the side. I find the DLC fun. Story-wise, it's nothing crazy. It elaborates a little bit on some of the Mangetsu stuff and a little bit about Zoma. That's just kind of it.
I'm gonna say, I think it's funny that I disagree with both of you guys. I never viewed this as part of the plot. So, like, I would not say Nana feels like shoehorned in because she was just in the world. So yeah. I was looking at this as, all right, let's compare this to the Demi-Fiend Quest DLC in SMT5. And that felt fun, but pretty shallow. Like, the quests weren't really quests. It was just find the portal, fight the fiends, rinse and repeat until you find Demi-Fiend. And even that, like, no one would call that little area a dungeon. That's just a hallway and then a boss fight. So I was comparing it to that, and like I liked that because it was cool to see. Like that was just nostalgia, baby. It was basically just give us $10 and you'll say, and we'll give you a bunch of member berries so you can see Hell Rider and like White Rider and all that stuff. So I really liked the Lost Numbers probably more than I ever expected because everything was voiced. It felt like it had actual production value into it more than any other side quest or any other kind of aspect in the game. I was not expecting a actual full-length dungeon, like as long, if not longer, than the final dungeon. Obviously, the dungeon's not anything crazy; it's just a tower, but it is way bigger than I would have ever thought. It has way more side quests than I would have thought. I liked Nana as a character in terms of learning who she is, having her join your party, follow you around dungeons. The fact that it had not one but two super bosses I thought was great, and then the fact that there was just straight up a whole brand new demon you can only get if you do the level 99 quest. I was like, this is cool. The only negative is then if you kind of think about it it does suck that this game doesn't have a single super boss, whereas this DLC has two, but it's not super fair to kind of like say what the game doesn't have, because again, in my opinion...
Soul Hackers 1 has a super boss. Or not Soul Hackers 1,
Soul Hackers 2 doesn't have
3DS.
A super boss.
Okay.
No, 2 does. 2 does.
Okay.
It's only a New Game Plus.
Tell me the super boss that's not in the DLC.
It's Seth.
That's not a super boss.
It is set up as a super boss.
Listen, even as someone who did that quest, I struggled. I mean, that's really loose. Like the Madame Ginkgo line, that's super like at least with Shiva, like Shiva was voiced. That at least had lore to it. Seth has no lore set up at all. It's like there's a presence. Like
no, I'm not saying it's a great super boss. I'm just saying that was the implication as it's your New Game Plus thing. Here's your super hard difficulty boss if you want to fight it doing New Game Plus.
Yes, I mean, I was so OP by the time I got to him. I guess that then it would I had a way harder time on both the super bosses and the Lost Numbers than anything I'd have with Seth. But yeah, Seth is definitely a butt because he is unfortunately the only boss that actually has phases of the moon change during battles. So that's the only interesting mechanic he had. So I'll give you that. Seth is probably the super boss of the game. It's just it sucks because there's no it's not cool to fight him. It's a cool fight, but it's not like at least with Shiva at least with like Shiva in SMT5, it was like cool. I wondered where you were. It's cool to have a cutscene with you. Seth was just I'm going to destroy you. So I'll give you that. Seth is definitely a freebie at least, but but again, even if it wasn't there, it's not fair to say comparison to what's not in the game because this is. They were very upfront with what it was. It is a side story, not about the plot. It obviously ties in and uses our characters and some of the setup, but nothing in the beginning, middle, or end is different with or without Nana existing. I liked her kind of backstory. I wouldn't even say it's fair to call it a twist, but I liked the kind of tie-in of her coming to look for her dad. I liked immediately us finding out that her dad was dead and it was because of the Phantom Society and things like that. I liked all of the quests being different without... Because, like, my worry originally was, are we just going to be replaying all of our dungeons and having random white pale monsters be our boss fights? But I really liked by the time we kind of finally got there, because it almost feels like there's two different endings. There's the ending when you finally find out that she's a Zoma. There is the after you fight her ending, you know? So, like, I liked that. I liked that they left that character open. I thought the fact that you could still go back and have her in your party and run around dungeon, like the dungeon with you was a really nice touch. If it was applicable throughout the whole game in the dungeons, I would have liked that, but again, this goes into, hey, that would have probably costed more money. But, I mean, for $10, it's like, it's the one thing of DLC in this game where I go, if you even remotely liked this game and you beat it, like, pick this up. It's worth buying and playing.
What did you think against the boss fight against Nana?
I was amazed how much, like, that boss fight, I probably, no shit, I think I spent 2.5 hours trying to beat.
It's a rough fight, but I like it.
It's because the only way I was able to beat her was by grinding up all the way to like 99 and then just using the best demons.
Even in 90,
at 99 it's still rough.
If you get her buffed all the like for me, I ended up having to just find a way of how can I get the most stacks possible before she does that debuff on you.
Well, well, for me, it was basically, like, I basically had every part, like, pretty much all my party members just resist or null everything in the game, but then, like, when I was at level 63, she would just kill me with energy drain, so then I'm like, okay, well, I can't do anything about that, because it's an almighty attack, so I just grinded up so that I had enough HP, like, to survive, and then it had all the, like, buffs and debuffs, and just beat her that way.
Did you beat her?
I did.
What was your strategy? So, like, for me, I didn't grind, really. I think mine was just, I got the right demons to be able to Sabbath and stack her right away, because I eventually got to a point where I did get nulled and stuff, but I had enough demons in my party that even with her buffs she has on, if you have demons and your stack is high enough, there are Sabbath attacks, so if you have a demon where his Sabbath attack does extra damage, that damage doesn't take into consideration the buff for debuff. So it will do a flat number of damage depending on the stack you're on. So that's how I was able to basically, my Sabbath would do like 12 damage to her, but my additional attack would do 900. So like that's eventually how I got to it.
Yeah, for me, I was just like powering through the debuffs, because I already had like a pretty cracked out team by the time I was doing this, so like I didn't really need to change anyone, I just needed to beat her fast enough. And if even when... Oh no. Even once she was like all super buffed and I was doing like 1 damage, like I had demons set up where it was just like, oh, I still have meat bullet on me. I have like 1500 health. Okay, meat bullet, 50,000 damage. Okay, she's dead. Though other times it only.
Did you guys all do the side quest before fighting her that got you the amulet?
Yeah.
No,
I didn't.
So, alright, prepare to be mad at yourself now. So, do you know when she does that second attack that sets out the miasma, and it, like, debuffs you like crazy?
Yeah.
If you do a side quest in the DLC dungeon, you unlock the Moon Amulet. And the Moon Amulet actually prevents the miasma from having any effect on you.
Well, I mean, I just brought Dakunda with me.
But I at least, I liked that was a thing in there of like, hey, here's a cool side quest that you could walk through and not really think about, but then if you explored it, you gotta check out more of the dungeon, and it made the very hard, quote-unquote, final boss a little bit more bearable. I thought that was like a nice little like way to reward you.
Because I liked when you're going in to fight Nana, like, you literally get a message where it's like, by the way, you still might have unfinished business in the dungeon if you want to check that out. Like, just make sure. So, like, it's not something you have to do, but it very much helps, and I thought it was neat.
I definitely at least liked that fight. It had a lot of cool, unique animations. It was a fun setup. Like, for demons, especially if you don't, like, get a system down, like, they are just the perfect triple threat of will F you up really bad.
Yeah. I think overall for the DLC, like, I really liked the gameplay of it. I thought that was great. I thought the new dungeon was chill. I think Nana is really well, like, characterized, and I love her voice acting, everything like that. It's just for me, like, I don't dislike her. It's just Atlas can only pull the thing so many times of, like, new character introduced, like, the new girl who everyone panders to and instantly likes, and everything is about how special she is.
When are we gonna get an Atlas like DLC or re-release where the new character is a guy?
Exactly. We need some of that gender equality.
That's Persona 3 portable.
Mm.
Just, man. Instead of a new character, it's just Theo.
Yeah, except everyone in portable was more focused on the female protagonist.
That's true.
Oh man. Yeah, but like I like Nana as a character. I think she's great. It's just I was very much just sitting there like there's not really much development. Obviously, because I missed the one cutscene that had Fig in it, I guess. But otherwise, like the only characters really getting developed is Nana, which I expected. I just wish there was a little more to it than see Special Girl go. everything that is there is good. It's just I'm not impressed by it.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's worth $10.
Story-wise.
You're talking to the wrong crowd. You're talking to the only two people on this show who dumped $90 into this game. Sorry, $90+ into this game.
Well, okay, I mean, if you count the collector's edition I bought, I spent $200 on that.
We're just talking DLC. We're DLC boys over here. We needed our $90 Mary costume.
I don't want to talk about my bank account right now.
Same with Iho. That was fucking stupid how they logged Iho behind that.
What do you think the internet would do if Rhino Frost was DLC back then?
They would... Well, I mean, okay, because, like, when you say back then, how long ago were you talking about?
Oh, like, let's just say Rhino 2... I mean, technically could have had DLC, but it wouldn't have done it at the time. At the time Rhino 2 released, in 2008, if they sold him as DLC, what do you think the reaction online would have been?
They probably would have been salty. But, I mean, like,
I'm
SMT...
honestly more surprised people aren't more mad about the DLC situation in Soul Hackers 2. I just feel like the only reason they're not is because it's really fucking confusing.
Well, I'm more surprised that it took people this long to start catching on to Atlas's shitty DLC, because they've been doing it since SMT 4.
I think this is easily the worst of it.
This is their worst.
You think this is worse than the Dancing Collection?
No,
yes.
100%. I am pretty sure that 99% of people are still unaware that the Phantom Thief outfits were a digital pre-order exclusive. At least
any game example you can tell me of what was worse or whatever, like even going to SMT4 and Apocalypse with the pre-order exclusive bundle, it was always possible to at least get it. Whereas like the only way to get all the DLC in this game was to pre-order it before launch, and you had to spend $90 digital only. Well, every other game had other alternatives.
Well, in SMT4, you also had the retailer armor pieces.
That's what I just said. The pre-order bonuses. You could have gotten the codes from you could have gotten the codes.
There is nothing worse, in my opinion, than having to spend. Well, obviously not having to, but if you spend $200 on a collector's edition, you can get the Iho figurine. But you don't get Iho in the game. You'll have to spend another $90 for that. If you want the game. Like, it's literally just paying $90 for maybe 2 more costumes and a demon.
Well, I mean, I still think that the worst example of Atlas's DLC is the Persona Dancing games, because if you bought those games separately, they were $60 a piece. But you had that $100 collector's edition with a very deceptive art book case thing, and it was also the only way to get Persona 4 Dancing All Night on PS4.
And then you also had all the season passes. I know who bought it, like actually bought all of the DLC for the dancing games myself. I can at least say those, again, it's not what's on sale or what content they're selling is the problem. It's that is there options and availability to buy it the way you want. Because guess what? If you only wanted the songs in the dancing games, perfect. You're not going to lose any sleep over fucking contacts lens DLC or colored wigs. Whereas, like, there will be people who pick up this game in 6 months and wonder, why the fuck can I not play as Phantom Thieves, Joker, Ringo? And there will just not be any answer or explanation for them.
It would be closer to an equivalent if it was like, you can get Persona 4 Dancing for PS4 only if you buy the digital bundle. If you get the physical collection, you don't get P4. But you have to get the digital one.
Yeah,
so if you want the physical collection,
if the Endless Dancing Trilogy thing was digital only, I think you'd have a bit more of a thing with it. But like, because they had at least a digital code with the physical collector's edition, that at least gave them some leeway.
It's still stupid. A lot of stupidity.
Who do you agree with? Are you on the right side or the wrong side of history? Who's to know?
Yeah.
I do have one last question for you guys, because I think we're just about finishing up at our definitely under an hour-long video.
I am hungry.
So my last question I want to ask you guys before we get out of here. Do you feel like this was a good Soul Hackers game? Not a good sequel. Like, at the end of the day, do you think that this lived up to being called Soul Hackers?
Well, I mean, I would say Devil Summoner, but it's not called Devil Summoner, but yeah, I'd say it did.
I can't speak as much to it because I have not beaten Soul Hackers 1. Because I'm a fake
Big fan.
poser.
Big fan.
I do own it. I've played a little bit of it. I understand why people feel it's not a great sequel, and I can't really even contest it. I don't care. I think it's a great game as it is.
Remember, we're not saying it's a great sequel. It live up to being a Soul Hackers game.
Yeah, I think as what it is and how the game presents itself, it definitely is Soul Hackers. It's a very different kind of Soul Hackers, but it's Soul Hackers.
And I think it's pretty obvious for me. Plus, it was a really interesting choice for them to make the theme song just be a cover of Ghostbusters, or instead they got the cast is just singing "Hacking Makes Me Feel Good" instead of "Busting Makes Me Feel Good." That was a really interesting choice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say one thing is that, like, the cast in Soul Hackers 2 aren't hackers, unlike in Soul Hackers 1.
I mean, Ringo definitely is a hacker, just a soul hacker. So,
I will say, how amazing is it that they made an entire sequel and never once used the spooky logo?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. Like, I feel like any other game would have like, oh look, it's the spooky van.
I also think it's kind of dumb that for Nemissa as a demon they used her in her like human form instead of her demon form.
Spoilers, they still want you to buy the 3DS version.
Well, why? Okay, so does that mean that Nemissa has just been possessing Hitomi the whole time?
I think if you look at her lore description, it might as well have just said, "Do you remember the girl from the cover of Soul Hackers?" Because there's absolutely no lore thought that went into her at all.
Pretty much.
Okay, my question now: how bad do you think the fan backlash would have been if Nemissa was locked behind the digital premium?
Because of how weak demons are in this game, probably not that high, because, like, let's be real, you're really only seeing them in Sabbath attacks and every now and then in dungeons. I was gonna say, not in terms of DLC, but, like, kind of going back to, boy, what they probably should have done instead of fucking Seth. Imagine if the Seth questline was all about finding and beating Nemissa to have her join your party. Because, like, I talked about
but that's
recently.
too much free fan service.
Well, I know
like,
that, but, like,
Atlas is not gonna do that.
As much as people hated the Demon DLC in SMT5, even though there wasn't a lot of it, did both of you buy that DLC or no?
Yeah,
I did.
The thing I found myself actually missing that, because, like, in this game you get the Demon DLC and there you go, you can just summon them all. There's no problem. I found myself missing, because I really loved what SMT5 did of making a little mini 5-minute lore quest of, like, hey, track down what Mephisto's doing, and oh, go track down and find Cleopatra. Like, I liked that kind of adding lore into the world, because there's literally no lore reason why Nemissa would be here at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, which, I guess that's just an extension of SMT5 just having really, really good quests. Well, like, in this game, like, the Nana quests are good, so I guess they could have done something deeper. It's just I don't see them doing it, especially when they have a lot more demons that they're trying to pawn off on you.
Well, I think they should have, like, for the paid DLC, they should have had more new demons. But instead, it's pretty much
for Mara?
No, I didn't. Were you expecting a joke answer? Because I don't have one.
I was actually trying to remember the name of the DLC demon. I'm running a blank on it, where she has, like, a galaxy under her skirt. Do you remember the name of it?
Tzitzibital?
Yeah, I when I saw her in motion in the game, I couldn't get over how low resolution the Galaxy JPEG or PNG they were using, because it was really distractingly blurry.
Yeah,
I paid for this. I
think,
paid for that blurry JPEG.
Yo, I would have paid for Cthulhu.
That's true. I mean, again, this isn't really going into the story things for it. I'll at least say this: I'm glad they didn't save any demons I would have wanted to see for DLC besides Nemissa, because the game does I think the game is one of the strongest demon compendiums Atlas has done in a very long time.
I don't know. I think locking Satan behind DLC is pretty that one hurts a little for
Yeah.
me.
You gotta pay.
Well,
You gotta.
at least-
You gotta pay for the most broken attack in the game.
I mean, at least Satan was in Soul Hackers 2 on like SMT5.
Yeah.
The Switch couldn't handle those tits. There were too many tits for the Switch to handle.
Yeah, I don't think Diana was in SMT5 either.
I don't either. We'll have to talk in a couple of in a month or so. One of you guys remind me, or someone listening to this, once it's October, closer to November, someone message me because I learned something recently about what demons Atlas Japan is not wanting to use anymore, and I found it very interesting. But I can't talk about it yet. But I will be able to eventually.
Okay.
And then we'll end it so we can finally eat.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we go?
Let us know what you guys thought of the story in the comments below, and don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and click
Hit
on
that
our channels,
bell.
and maybe there you go. Yeah, click the bell.
Hit that bell, and also only... No, I'm not going to do that. And also, only 10% of you guys are subscribed. Please subscribe to the
Oh,
channel.
that is not the
and
word I thought you were gonna say.
Follow Gnarly's OnlyFans.
Follow me on OnlyFans. Follow me on Fansly. Follow me on Patreon.
Follow Gnarly's Wattpad. His AO3.
Follow me on Snapchat. I don't even
Napster.
Napster. Follow me on MySpace.
Hey, join the new Gnarly Discord. I'll put the link in the comments below, guys. Just join it. I know the name will say Shin Megami Tensei Network, but just think it's his Discord. It's okay.
But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.